the return of Christ, when and how. So if you want to use that over the last couple months, they're in the back. So the whole goal of eschatology is the study of last things. That is, what's going to happen before the Lord returns. Here's the good news. No matter what view you hold to, we all believe Jesus is actually coming back. That is our hope. That there is going to be a last judgment, that Christians and non-Christians are going to face the judgment seat of Christ. We are going to face Christ for our works done in His name. It's not that we get to heaven and we lose our salvation, but that is going to happen. And then after the judgment seat of Christ ushers in what's known as the eternal state, where we are going to be with Him in glory. So the last few weeks, I've been looking at what view is called post-millennialism. So what that means is after the millennium. So in this view, we believe that Jesus will return after a millennium. What that means is that millennium is a spiritual millennium, and it started at Acts chapter 2 at the beginning of the church. So right now, under this view, we are in the millennium, and we've been in the millennium for about 2,000 years. Under this view, we believe that the gospel will advance to every nation, and more nations will come under the lordship of Christ. Now, right now, as we speak, the church is growing in China, in South America, in Africa. So I know we tend to be, as Christians in America, very American-centric in our preaching and our understanding of the Bible. And just because it looks like our nation is not surrendering to Jesus does not mean that the gospel is ineffective. Because in the whole globe, the gospel is growing. So what postmillennials believe is before the Lord returns, we're going to have this golden age of revival, and people are going to come to Christ, and it's going to be an amazing time. So before we can go forward and look at the future, we have to go back. So we are going to look at Matthew 24 today, and hopefully the next couple of weeks I can show you from Matthew 24 what is called the Mount Olive Discourses of Jesus, where He predicts several things. And how you interpret Matthew 24 will help you or hurt you in your reading in the book of Revelation. So postmillennials believe, a large chunk of us who hold this view, that the majority of the book of Revelation has been fulfilled. So the view that you and I were taught maybe in the past, we were taught that a lot of Matthew 24 or Revelation is future tense to us. That's where you get the books like Left Behind by Tim LaHaye, and that's where people interpret Revelation to mean like a physical antichrist. They say there's America's in the Bible. If you get Matthew 24 in the book of Revelation wrong, you start to look for people who are the Antichrist, who is not in the book. So through the years, if you did through the 80s, who did people think the Antichrist was in the 80s? And who else? Some people also thought, come on, say it, people, Reagan. Some people thought Reagan was the Antichrist. Some people in World War II thought Hitler was the Antichrist. So when you don't have a good interpretation of Matthew 24 in the book of Revelation, you're going to be chasing conspiracy signs and theories, and that's not what the postmillennial view does. What we do when people come up against the criticism of Christ, we say that Jesus' predictions in Matthew 24 were fulfilled by AD 70, proving that he was the Messiah. So in early church history, people would say, as witnessing to people about Jesus, saying these things that Jesus said did happen. They happened, and world history supports it. So here's the thing that I need to argue today for this view. When you have an end-time theology that looks to saying, let's say some people say, Jesus is going to come back in 2070. Well, the future is moldable. I can twist events. I can make it fit my worldview. But for me, looking back at world history, it's already fixed. I can't twist that. So for me to interpret the book of Revelation and show you from world history, I'm either right or wrong. So that's what I'm going to attempt the next couple weeks. So in Matthew 24, we're going to see a couple of things. And here's some things he predicts. The destruction of the temple, the end of the age, signs of the end of the age, the abomination of the desolation, the great tribulation, and then the next several weeks we are going to look at world history and to see how in this view everything that Jesus said in Matthew 24 has already happened. And why is this important? Because atheists who know the Bible use Matthew 24 to say Jesus is a false prophet. Why? Why do they do this? Because Christians who say that everything is future tense, we all heard it. Like growing up, all I knew was what Christian movie told me, what pastors told me that the world was, that this guy's going to come up, he's going to be the Antichrist, he's going to go to Jerusalem, he's going to put himself in the temple as God, he's going to unite the world under one world religion. But when you look at Matthew 24, Jesus tells the people there, this is going to happen in your day, and he tells the disciples, you're not going to finish going through the towns of Israel until I return. So all the disciples, they're all dead. They're all dead. Everyone's dead. They're all in heaven. Did Jesus come back in the first century physically? No. So therefore, what non-believers do is saying because Jesus said he was coming back in Matthew 24 and didn't, he's not real. But what if you handle the Bible correctly, Jesus came back in AD 70 under divine judgment. That was a period of divine judgment. What ended in AD 70? What ended in AD 70 was the Old Covenant, the Old Testament standards, and from the beginning of the church, in Acts chapter 2 to now, we are under the New Covenant, which is salvation through faith alone in Jesus Christ. So the church, which is made of Jewish believers and non-Jewish believers, that's the age we are in right now. That is the argument that post-millennials make. So, here's why this is important. Because going to Matthew 24, or any book of the Bible, I can make it say whatever I want it to say. So we need to not put our 21st century experiences on this text. We need to learn how to read the Bible in its original context so we can apply it to our life today. Matthew 24 is not to us. It's to the original audience. The original audience was first century Jews, and we'll get into it. So, Matthew 24, verse 1. Jesus left the temple and was going away when his disciples came to point out to him the building of the temple. But he answered them, "You see all these? Do you not? Truly I say to you, there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down." All right, right there, Jesus predicts that the temple will be destroyed. All right, do you guys know what stands at the temple right now in 2020? What's on the location right now as we speak? A mosque. So we're in Jerusalem right now, there's a mosque. So would that be, so a lot of people say that Jesus is telling you something that happens 1,000 years in the future. So it's been a mosque for a very long time. So where's Jesus? The temple should have been destroyed, right? So what future people who think end times are still coming, as in that there's going to be a temple, some people believe a temple is going to be rebuilt, the animal sacrifice system will be reinstated, and then the physical Antichrist will come back, and that's how the timing of things will go. But what we will see in world history, Jesus' prophecy here was fulfilled in AD 70. In AD 70, the Roman Empire was besieged Jerusalem, and Jerusalem was destroyed, and the temple was destroyed. And what happened was Rome put up a golden idol of the Roman Empire inside the temple. So right there, you had what's known as the abomination of the desolation. It's not a person. It's not a person. It's a symbol of the Roman Empire that was stuck into the temple, saying Caesar is God, not this Christ, and not your God Yahweh. So because back then, in those days, Christians and Jews were just called Jews. Back in those days, Christians were just seen as a sect of Judaism. So, Matthew 24, verse 3, listen to what Jesus says. He says this privately to his disciples. As he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately saying, "Tell us, when will these things be? What will the signs of the coming in the end of the age?" So they asked him, when will the end of the age happen? Now, futurists who are still waiting for the end of the age, we need some definitions. So the end of the age, a lot of people think that Jesus is talking here about the end of human history. So when the Bible talks about the end of the age, people often define that meaning the end of world history. But that is not the context here. What Jesus is talking about is the end of an age, as in the old covenant, the old standards, and he's speaking about the end and the judgment upon the covenant breakers of the day. So in this example, the Pharisees. So the Pharisees in Judaism, who was claiming to know Yahweh, what did they do? What was the biggest thing they did in the first century was they rejected Christ. So because they rejected the Son, God was going to bring divine judgment down on that generation. And a biblical age is what? 40 years. So from the time Jesus says these words in AD 33, 40 years later, AD 70 happens, and the temple is destroyed, and it is because of divine judgment. So they asked Jesus in verse 3, when will be the end of the age? Jesus answered it, see that no one leads you astray. For many will come in my name saying, I am the Christ, and they will lead many astray. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place. But the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are but the beginning of birth pains. All right, you guys, if you're not a history nerd, I won't blame you. I won't blame you, but do you know between AD 64 and AD 70, there was great wars, famines, because at that time Rome was in major upheaval, and the man that was in charge was Caesar Nero. Here's what you need to know about Caesar Nero. He was an evil person. He was corrupt. He had relationships with children, multiple partners, had his own wife killed. And then in AD 64, he personally had Rome caught on fire and blamed Christians. This is at the beginning of what's called the persecution of the Christians. So this is what he did during this time was he wanted a scapegoat for the fire. So he blamed the Christians. One of their own historians wrote this about that event. Neither human resources, nor imperial generosity, nor appeasement of the gods eliminated the sinister suspicion that the fire had been deliberately started. To stop the rumor, Nero made scapegoats and punished every refinement of the notoriously depraved Christians, as they were popularly called. Their originator, Christ, has been executed in Tiberius' reign by the procurator of Judea, Pontius Pilate, who was actually a prefect and not a procurator. But in spite of this temporary setback, the deadly suspicion had broken out again, not in Judea where the mischief had started, but even in Rome. All degraded and shameful practices collect and flourish in the capital. First, Nero had the self-admitted Christians arrested. Then on their information, large numbers of others were condemned, not so much for starting fires as because of their hatred for the human race. Their deaths were made amusing. Dressed in wild animal skins, they were torn to pieces by dogs or crucified, or made into torches to be set on fire after dark as illuminations. So Nero had Christians put on torches on the streets of Rome as night lights. That's nice, right? So he did that, and then it says, despite their guilt as Christians and the ruthless punishment it deserved, the victims were pitied, for it was felt that they were being sacrificed to one man's brutality rather than the nation's entrance. And then this guy added, punishment were also inflicted on Christians, except for professing a new and mischievous religious belief. So during this time, Christians were tolerated. Now, Rome, if you know world history, they claimed that Caesar was God and that you had to bend your knee to Caesar. Whoever was Caesar at the time, they claimed to be divine. And then here come these group of people from this small Judean country saying, Caesar is not king, Jesus is. So when Nero wanted to burn down Rome to make room for a palace, he blamed Christians. So Christians were already hated by the Roman people. So I ask you, if you were a Christian living in AD 64, would you think you were under the Great Tribulation? Seeing your friends and family hanging from streets? And you would think you were under the Great Tribulation. So how come these verses turn into a future new world order for Americans? You see how quick it can become about us? It's not about us. And what happens is, when you realize what Jesus is saying here, it makes you more bold in the fact that these things came to pass and prove Jesus is the Messiah. So, and let me just be honest with you. I know for a lot of us, we weren't taught this view. We were taught that everything is still in the future, and just give yourself some grace, because our traditions that we grew up with, it's hard to get over sometimes. But what I try to tell people is, when I started studying seriously these passages about 10 years ago, I had to learn to let the Bible speak and not what I was taught. So let the Bible teach you, not your tradition. Because not all our traditions are bad, but not all our traditions are biblical. So, in verse 6, it says, and you will hear wars and rumors of wars. During this period, there were what's known as the Jewish wars, and I'm going to go into that next week. But you will see that that time period fits these verses to a T. Kingdom will rise against kingdom, and there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are about the beginning of the birth pains. And then this, verse 9. They will deliver you up to the tribulation and put you to death, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. So what I just tell you in world history, that verse has been fulfilled. That is good news for us. And the fact that Jesus said this would happen, and it came to pass. And many false prophets will arise and lead many astray. And because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. But the one that endures to the end will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all nations. Then the end will come. All right. So the end will come at the end of that paragraph is talking about the end of human history. So this is why we need to know definitions. This is why we need to know how to read the Bible for all it's worth. So there are things that we still believe in future tense. What we believe in future tense is Jesus is coming back physically. There's going to be judgment. There's going to be divine judgment. And then we are raised to life again. Non-believers and Christians will experience the resurrection. I will be Mike, you will be you. We'll be in glorified bodies. It's going to be amazing. And all we disagree in the church and the different camps is the timing of events before all this happens. That's the only thing we're discussing right now, is timing of these things. So the problem with the futurist view, which is mainly called premillennialism, which means that Jesus returns, they argue Jesus returns before the millennium, and there is a physical 1,000-year reign on earth, and then all that happens. Here's the problem with that view mostly. And I said this last week, they see us, the church, getting our butts kicked until Jesus comes back. They see the world getting worse and worse and worse and worse, and no one's listening to the gospel, no one's coming to Christ, and that's just not what you see in the Bible. What you see in the Bible is, the Bible clearly claims that Jesus will remain in heaven until all his enemies are put under his feet as a footstool. And the last enemy is death. So the Bible clearly tells under the Great Commission that we are called to make disciples of all nations. So what the Bible shows is, before Jesus comes back, more and more nations will submit to Christ. So Jesus is Lord right now under the post-millennial view. He's reigning right now. He's in control of all the governments right now. And just because we don't physically see nations, as right now we are in a period of our country rejecting a lot of Christ, does not mean that it will not happen in the near future. This gives us great hope. This means that we come from victory to victory to victory in Jesus, because we are operating as Christians in the church from the cross, where he said, "It is finished." The devil has been defeated, till we know until he comes back, we can share the gospel and people are going to respond. And here's the thing that about 10 years ago that changed my perspective on Matthew 24 and Revelation, because I grew up being taught the whole time things are going to get worse and worse and worse and worse, and then all of a sudden some guy's going to come along and he's going to be the Antichrist, and he's going to create a one world system. We're going to get computer chips in our arms, and you can't spend money if you don't have a credit card. Do you know at one time social security numbers were considered the mark of the beast? Do you see how your end times will make you crazy? You're always looking for signs. Are credit cards the mark of the beast? Are tattoos the mark of the beast? Now, don't get me wrong. Do I want a computer chip in my arm? No, but it's not in the Bible, guys. That's the point. It's not in the Bible. John the Apostle was not writing about helicopters and tanks. Could you imagine if a first century Jew saw an iPhone? How would he describe that? How would he describe a tank or a helicopter? So people who hold those views, even though they say Revelation is literal, they use symbolism just like I do, but they use it to mean different things. So when they see a verse like where it talks about the beast, or they see a verse that talks about locusts, they translate locusts in the Bible to mean helicopters. What? It doesn't mean helicopters. Could you imagine being a first century Jew and God gives John the revelation and they, no, it's not for you, it's for Christians living in America in 3,000 years. What? What's America? Huh? What's a tank? What's a helicopter? An iPhone? Wait, they're going to get chips in their arms? What's a chip? See, your end time theology matters, because it's going to make you interpret the Bible. You know, I remember when I first became a Christian, I used to watch Christian news all the time, and everything that happened in the world, they were like, "Oh, Jesus is coming back in 6 years." When 9/11 happened, when those towers were hit, how many times were people saying, "Oh, this is it. This is right in Revelation." It's not in Revelation. The towers are not in Revelation. When you have these type of theologies that say everything is to come, everything is not happening yet, it makes you look at the Bible, and you have conspiracy theories like Bible code. You remember the Bible code was popular, where people would put the Bible in a computer program in the original Hebrew and Greek, and it said that it had secret messages about aliens and UFOs and 9/11 and Nostradamus. It doesn't. Learn how to read the Bible for what it was. These first century Jews and Christians, Jesus is telling them a great tribulation is going to come upon your generation. And he tells the Christians it's going to be soon. Therefore, and in the book of Revelation, the first chapter, what does the first chapter say? The very first verse says, this revelation was given to John to let the church know what would soon take place. What would soon take place. So, I don't know how you can take that phrase to mean 1,000 or 3,000 years in the future. Soon means soon. It doesn't mean 3,000 years in the future where people are going to have, and I don't want to go on a tangent here, but Corona in the mass order is not in the book of Revelation. You may not like it, I don't like it, but it's not in the book of Revelation. The mass is not, listen, church, we got to get this right. The mass order in America is not the mark of the beast. It's not. Can we please stop? I wish Christians would stop looking. The mass can be, you can say the mass order is stupid, but it's not the mark of the beast. Okay. Pass a rant over. All right. Verse 15. But do you see how you can get crazy? Chasing these signs and conspiracy theories. Knowing that this already happened, and that the majority of the book of Revelation has been fulfilled, what does that do in my witnessing? I know I believe in the right Jesus. I know Jesus is real because all his prophecies have come true. All right. I can't wait until the emails I get from saying that. All right. So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. And then listen to this. Listen to this. This great day of tribulation, Jesus tells the Christians, you can escape this. What have we always been taught about this? That when the rapture comes, we are taken and people are left behind and they're not going to be able to escape the wrath of God. But here Jesus is telling his people, you can escape this thing that's coming. Because during AD 70, Christians fled Jerusalem. They fled. They got out of town. They got out of Dodge. Why? Why did they get out? Because Jesus warned them 30 years earlier. They knew what was coming. Okay. Then those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let the one who is on the housetop not go down to take what is in the house. And let the one who is in the field not turn back to take his cloak. And alas, for women who are pregnant and for those who are nursing infants in those days, pray that your flight may not be in the winter or in the Sabbath. Okay, so if the rapture is real, why is he telling Christians to hope that you can flee not in winter? If we're peacing out, who cares, right? Why would he tell them, don't, be ready for pregnant women during this time? He's talking to Christians here. So if we're being raptured, why is he saying, hope the tribulation comes not in the winter? Because this event already happened, guys. This already happened. The Great Tribulation already happened. All right. Let the one who is on the housetop not go down. I'm sorry, I already read that. Verse 20. Pray that your flight may not be in the winter on the Sabbath. For then, listen, verse 21, for then there will be a great tribulation, such as not been from the beginning of the world until now. And listen to this verse. There's going to be time after the tribulation. So listen to this verse. In the ESV it says, from then there will be a great tribulation, such as not been from the beginning of the world until now, no, and never will be. So that verse right there lets you know there is going to be history that happens after the tribulation. We have all been taught that when the Great Tribulation happens, no matter what, the other popular views say, okay, the Great Tribulation happens, the wrath of God happens, we're raptured, and we're gone. But this verse clearly shows you that there's going to be time for these Christians who experience this tribulation, that they are still going to be on earth. What does Jesus say? Jesus say, the meek will inherit the earth. Does it say, no, the meek will rapture, hang out in heaven for about 3 years, and then they inherit the earth? No, it says we inherit the earth. All right. And he goes, in those days had not been cut short, no human being will be saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. Then if anyone says to you, look, here is the Christ, or there he is, do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and perform great signs and wonders, so as to lead astray, if possible, even the elect. See, I have told you beforehand. So if they say to you, look, he is in the wilderness, do not go out. If they say, look, he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. For lightning comes from the east and shines as far as the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. So listen, the Lord's return is going to be visible to everyone. It's not going to be in secret. You're not going to be able to say, oh, was that Jesus? You're going to know it was Jesus. In Acts chapter 2, what does the angels tell the disciples? They're looking up into heaven, and they're like, he ascended to heaven, and he's going to return likewise. So this idea that there's going to be a secret rapture, that the world's going to be like what just happened to all the Christians, you don't see that in the text. Because everyone's going to see Jesus. Everyone. There's going to be a loud trumpet from heaven, and boom, he's here. He's here. So that is amazing. Okay. The coming of the Son of Man. We're in verse 29. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the power of heavens will be shaken. There will appear in heaven and the sign of the Son of Man, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn. And they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven and on the power of his great glory. And he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather the elect from the four winds and from the ends of the heaven and to the other. So that when Jesus returns, it's going to be a major event in human history. Can we agree with that? That is going to be a pretty major event. Okay. So I'm going to skip down to verse 36. But concerning the day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father only. For this is so important for us to grasp end-time theology. For as were in the days of Noah, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the days when Noah entered the ark. And they were unaware until the flood came and swept them all away. So will be coming the Son of Man. All right. Those verses should transform your whole view on the rapture. So Jesus says, as in the days of Noah will be as the days of the coming of the Son of Man. Who was taken away in the day of Noah? Who was taken away? Was it Noah and his family, or was it the unbelievers? The unbelievers were swept away. But we have historically been taught that through the rapture, we go. The righteous are saved. The unrighteous gets wrath and judgment. So we should take this not so much absolutely literally, but in the sense of the fact that when Christ comes back, it's not this secret meeting with believers that we secretly leave earth. And here's why this is so important about Matthew 24. Many cults have been started by misinterpreting Matthew 24. If you grew up in the 90s, you remember David Koresh in Waco. David Koresh literally said he was the fulfillment of Matthew 24. You see where you can go wonky with your end time theology. David Koresh, the cult leader who led to that crazy thing down in Waco, that many women and children were killed with the standoff of the FBI, he said he was the literal and fulfillment of that passage. Who also interpret this? The Church of Latter-day Saints, Mormons. It's right there in the name. The Church of the later days, last days, saints. So they believe everything is future tense, and that they are the correct church, and that you have to be Mormon to be saved. The way we interpret Matthew 24 will impact the way we live out our Christian life. If you believe everything is future tense, if you believe everything is yet to come, but has not been fulfilled, if you don't believe this has been fulfilled, you're gonna do gymnastics in Matthew 24 to make Matthew 24 fit things in the future. But see, we don't have to do that under this end time worldview. Under postmillennialism, I believe everything already happened. I believe that Jesus proved himself to be the Messiah. So I don't have to turn on Fox News and look for the Antichrist. I know I believe in Christ, and I know the gospel is coming. And so we're going to get into that. In about 3 weeks, I want to handle this. Do you know often what have we been taught about the beast in the book of Revelation? We've been taught that the beast is the same one as the Antichrist. The beast is not the Antichrist. The Antichrist, in 1 John and other places that John writes about that, it says that anyone who denies Christ coming into the flesh is the Antichrist. So anyone who says that Jesus is not the Messiah is acting as an Antichrist. The beast in Revelation is a king. It represents a king. And I'm going to make an argument to you guys that the Roman Empire and Caesar fits that beast. The beast is a king. So there's that. Okay. Here's what he tells his people. So he goes, and they were unaware until the flood came and swept them away. So will be the coming of the Son of Man. Then 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken and one left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill, and one will be taken and one left. Therefore, stay awake, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. But know this, that if the master of the house had known in what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and would not have let his house be broken into. Therefore, you must be ready. You also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour that you do not expect. All right, so a lot of us have heard this passage 1,000 times to mean that the rapture, they put the rapture on this text. They say, one's going to be left, one's going to be taken. And the way that it's been translated is, the one taken is the Christian. But what did Jesus say prior to the verses? He said prior to that, it's going to be like in the days of Noah. And in the days of Noah, the unrighteous was swept away. Just think about that. Just mull that over as we study this. The point of this is, no matter when he's coming back, us as Christians, who are Christians now, we need to stay awake, and we need to be faithful, and we need to be salt and light in the world. That means now that we're living in 2020, we don't know when the Lord's going to come back. He may come back tomorrow, or he may come back 2,000 years from now. The point is that we are called to be faithful with the Great Commission. So all of us who are living in Claysville, God cares about the people in Claysville that don't know the gospel. So until anywhere there's a sinner, anywhere there are people who don't know Jesus, he's going to have Christians. Because we get to call people to Christ, and we get to be part of this golden age of revival. We will see revival in the world. It's already happening. Who then is faithful and wise servant? I promise, kids, we're almost done. Whom his master has set over his household, to give them their food at the proper time. Blessed is the servant whom his master will find doing when he comes. Truly I say to you, he will set him over all his possessions. But if the wicked servant says to himself, my master is delayed, and begin to beat his fellow servants and eat and drink with drunkards, the master of the servant will come on the day when he does not expect him, and in an hour he does not know. And he will cut him into pieces, put him with the hypocrites. In a place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Here's a warning I have for Christians in our day. We are talking about everything but the gospel. When you get on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, Christians are talking about politics and religion. They are arguing about everything under the sun. They think our country is in the worst shape it's ever been. Here's the thing. They're not being wise servants. If you are a Christian, what are we called to be? We're called to be about our Father's business. And what is our Father's business? The gospel. The kingdom of God. The kingdom of God, no matter how bad you think it gets in America, Jesus is winning. The gospel is real. The kingdom is advancing. We as Christians, when you're saved and you're put in the family of God, your priorities change. And your priorities become about Jesus Christ. And your priorities is bringing lordship and his lordship and people to him in every area of life. That means we proclaim Christ to politicians. We proclaim Christ to the medical field. We proclaim Christ to local and federal laws. Why? Because we want to see our nation submit to Christ. So that is our goal as Christians. Our goal as Christians is not to get online and fight about Joe Biden or Donald Trump. Because here's the deal. World leaders come and go, but Jesus is forever. And no matter who's in the White House dictates who Jesus is. I don't care who wins in 2020, but Jesus is my king. And I'm going to obey him no matter who's in there. I don't care about who's on the Supreme Court, because they're sinners. And they're going to do what sinners do. Even the so-called conservative judges did not fulfill their promises to us. So what do? We proclaim the king. No, so here's the deal. When people are anxious and nervous and they're all tight in chest because their guy's not winning the election or they don't like the current Democrat in charge, here's what happens when you have this kind of theology that is going to keep getting worse. You're not going to be motivated to share the gospel. But knowing that Jesus has won, knowing that AD 70 has already happened and proved Jesus is the Christ, and that we are in this golden age of gospel proclamation, we know that we go from victory to victory. I'm telling you, this is a guarantee from the Bible. If you share the gospel with people, they will be saved. God does not waste your gospel witness. But if we are going to be Christians, and we are going to be naysayers and negative about everything, if you get online right now, you would think that we as a people, as Americans, not as Christians, as Americans, are divided. But is that your experience in real life? I have friends of all different backgrounds. And we disagree on politics, we disagree on religion. We're not trying to kill each other. Facebook has made people forget what it's like to get punched in the mouth for running your lips. And we live in a generation that told us that it's not polite to talk about politics. That's all they're talking about. And so my question is, if you are a Christian, why are you not using your technology or your time to tell people about Jesus? Because I believe what's going to happen is we are going to see nation after nation come to Christ. It's already happening. I know in America we don't see it. We don't see it right now because we live in a post-Christian nation. Our laws don't represent the law of God all the time. But if you would just do your research, you will see that Christianity is growing throughout the world. The Methodist Church, just for example, they were going to split over an issue, and you know what saved them to stay in key Christian doctrine? Their denomination in Africa outvoted the American Christians. That's amazing to me. You know, in a day of age when the church says we gotta listen to black voices, well, the Methodist Church got offended because the black voices wanted to stay in Orthodox Christianity. They're like, well, no. Here's the good news: Christ is winning. Christ is winning, church. And I said this last week, and I'll say it now. Some people will look at these empty seats in our church as signs that no one's listening to the gospel. But I know that's not true. Last week, I read that letter to you from my friend that's a chaplain that is being blessed by our ministry. I see examples. Our little church is reaching the world with the gospel through the internet. It really is, guys. I know you don't always see it, but when I see these empty seats, I see opportunities that I know throughout the years of being together here at a church, we are going to see Jesus bring people to our fellowship. How cool is that? How amazing is that to know that, you know, when I first came here, even when I first came here as your pastor, my first Sunday, I think we had like 10 people. And, you know, when you have a church of 10 people and about 3 or 4 don't like you, I don't think you're starting off on a good foot, are you? But now, look at how amazing our church has been. Even before the virus hit, God was bringing a lot of people to our church. They were hearing the gospel. What you guys don't get to see is all the people I'm pastoring in the community through pastoral counseling. Like, God is using our church to advance the gospel in Claysville. It's happening. So, in closing, I promise to get you guys out of here in like 2 minutes. Your end times theology will impact your witnessing. And the way you interpret Matthew 24 will impact the way you read the book of Revelation. I hope that today, and I hope this study has encouraged you. I hope that you will look at the Bible in a way that knows that when you face criticism for what we believe, you know you have believed in the correct Jesus. Jesus is the Messiah. In AD 70, in divine judgment, Jerusalem was destroyed. The temple was destroyed. Christians were persecuted as Jesus prophesied. The one who endures to the end will be saved. As Christians in 2020, we have believed in the biblical Jesus. So I challenge you, go out there and be the church, knowing that your witness to the gospel won't be for naught. Let's close in prayer. Lord Jesus, I pray that I handled your text well today. I pray that no matter what we hold when it comes to our interpretation, the revelation, and the timing of events, no matter if we're post-mill or pre-mill or a-mill, no matter if we are pre-trib rapture or mid-trib rapture, or if we don't believe in rapture at all, I pray that we will be salt and light as long as we live for you. The goal here, Jesus, is that people will come to faith in you. We want people to become Christians because we want people to be saved. We want people to turn from their sin and turn to Christ and see his worth and value. His worthiness is greater than anything. And no matter what circumstance we face in life, we know we have lived for the right Jesus. In your awesome name I pray. Amen.